This is the Aftermarket Radio Network. Hey, Carm Capriato here, the Automotive Podcast Guy with episode 648. Hey, don't forget, Archive Town Hall Academy, Aftermarket Weekly, Carmcast, and For the Record episodes are all available on my website, remarkableresults.biz. Hey, go take a surf. Hey, do you remember being in school and it seemed like all you were doing was writing? You also memorized phone numbers. Remember that? With the introduction of cell phones and computers, it seemed like our memory banks shifted. Anything we need is just a click of a button or a Google search away. In this episode, Matt Fanslow challenges you to go back to the days of journaling and recount your day. Start keeping a log of success and struggles you face in work and life. It will help you map out a path to success for yourself. Journaling would be beneficial for new technicians entering our industry that might be overwhelmed. And that doesn't take much. Will you take the time to create your own personal case study? Type it or write it. You choose. Hey, thanks to our sponsors, Apex and Shopware, for bringing you this episode. You know, with registration now open for Apex 2021 in Las Vegas, you can already feel the excitement building for this year's homecoming. I can't wait to reconnect with all of you in person. The dates, write them down, November 2nd through the 4th, and be there. Registration now at AAPEXshow.com. Every piece of paper you touch adds up to seconds, minutes, and hours of your staff's time. Remove that paper out of your business and unlock your employees' potential with Shopware's digital shop management software on the web at getshopware.com. Hey, Matt Fanslow has an interesting For the Record episode. You got to listen to it. It's titled Lessons from Star Trek. Head to my website to listen. Hey, a warm welcome to my friend Matt Fanslow from Riverside Automotive. How you doing, Matt?
Excellent. How about you?
I'm wonderful. Thank you so much. The weather's changing here in town. We're so happy. An 80-degree day here in the Buff. So that must mean that summer's almost here.
It's almost like a switch nowadays. This year we got a spring. Usually it doesn't seem to work that way. It's winter, the snow melts, spring lasts a couple weeks, and then it's like the heat comes right away.
Well, whatever you guys get there, we get, I think, a day or two later, something like that.
Been fairly cool this year. I like it.
And you know what that does? That must make you stop and think for a bit, and you let your mind wander, and you picked up the phone, and you said, I just had a moment. Let me get it off my chest. And I said, it sounds like a podcast. So, you know me, if I find something brand new, unique, and different, and especially if it comes from you, we got to turn the recorder on. We got to get into the studio, turn the recorder on. So this is where we are. And again, I think people kind of have an idea what we're going to talk about because it's the title of the show, but diary. I mean, I think it's such a cool idea. Wait till you hear this.
Yeah, a diary or a journal. So not that we've gone through a rash of entry-level techs, novice techs, but we've gone through what I feel like is a fair share. And a lot of times it's like they don't get it. They don't grasp what's going on. They don't catch on. You know, after the first couple, you just kind of blame them. Like, oh, they just don't have it. They don't got what it takes. And then after a couple more, at least I start to wonder if it's not them so much anymore. Is it the system that they're operating in? Is it leadership, mentorship in the Bay for them? I've wrestled with that a long time. You know, what could I do better? Then I have to twist it a little bit. Maybe it isn't 100% on me. I need their help too. There's a lot of focus on growing our own techs. We got the competent technician shortage, and I think it's legit.
I love that. The competent technician shortage, yeah.
And that's what it seems like. And so, you know, schools can't churn out competent techs, or they're going to do it at a very, very low percentage. The young people or the people coming out of college, if they've got it, a lot of times they've had it for a while because maybe they grew up in a shop or around that type of thing, so they grasp it, right? But it's a low percentage.
It's 1%. It's 1% of the grads that can come in and contribute. But you're right. I mean, they're entry level at best.
With that focus and on development and all that, what can I do to help them learn this new information? You know, I'm showing them something they've maybe never seen before in their entire life. And I used to tell the other ones that were, came and went, that we had to let go or they would choose to leave. The time spent maybe driving to and from work oftentimes is 15, 20 minutes. Some of them were 30 minutes. Some of them were 10 minutes. But that time is a good time to think about the day. Go through your day and just be honest. And honest might be very critical. And honest might be really, really positive. Like, give yourself a pat on the back if you deserve it. But go through the day. And we're talking about your entry level. So there's going to feel like a lot of negativity. I was supposed to do this service. I was supposed to do this oil change and this tire rotate, and it was supposed to only take an hour. And I took 3. Okay. Instead of beating yourself up about it, let's unpack it a little bit, and you can do this. Just go through it a little bit. Where did I lose a lot of time? What happened? And just, again, be honest. Was I messing around on my phone? Did I just not know what I was doing? And it's an experience thing. So now next time I should be able to do it much faster. I wasted a lot of motion. I've got my digital inspection and I'm doing it 1 point at a time. Literally, check left front ball joint. I checked it. Now I inspected it, however, tested it. It's good. Green check mark. Check left front tie rod end. Oh, I'll check that. Okay, 1 at a time. Well, you're destroying time that way. You're just chewing it up. Okay, fine. We can learn from that. And where this is going is maybe that's asking a lot to think about it every time, to think about it and then have it committed to memory.
I hear what you're saying, to think about it at the moment in time, but I love your idea of rewinding the day. And if you look at the fact that this is, they really gave me 1 hour, or they gave me, let's say they gave me 20 minutes to do that inspection, and it took me an hour and a half. They must really like me to allow me to do that, or they're giving me some freedoms to learn, to fail forward. Who's going to help me? Who's going to actually tell me that this is good or bad? It goes back to that whole mentoring thing. And I love the idea of the journal. Write down your day and learn from it. My God, what a fabulous idea.
So I've been wrestling with this for a while. How can I help them? And I gave them my speech about that, review the day, rehash the day.
I loved where this started, but what you can do to help them. I love that angle there.
It has to be, right? That's asking a lot for somebody to just all by themselves fix it. For them to by themselves to recognize the problem, diagnose the problem and properly repair themselves. That's a big ask.
Competency is one thing, Matthew, but more and more I hear from people, they say one of the biggest problems in any shop at all levels is communication.
Communication, and then I think just trying to remember all the stuff to process it. Especially, again, we're really picking on novice level, but even not novice, you're not on the lube rack anymore. You're doing more things, but you're making a lot of mistakes. You feel like you're always catching hell. This is what I was telling Carm when I called him up, that I've been wrestling around with this for a while and thinking about it and not knowing what to do. And I'm on YouTube, and in my feed pops up a thumbnail to the Tonight Show with Johnny Carson. And I've seen this before. I mean, I would have been pretty young during Johnny Carson's, definitely the heyday, but even as he was drifting off into the twilight of his career and to retirement, I would have been pretty young yet when he had that final show with Robin Williams and Bette Midler. But I've seen, my parents would buy the tapes, and then when I was a kid, they would have reruns during lunchtime. So we'd come in as kids during lunch, and I mean, we couldn't wait. We prayed Karnak was going to be on. And no idea what he's talking about, but some of it was hilarious. But this bit, or I should say this appearance, was Steve Martin. And he goes, Steve, you've been on the show quite a few times. You have any idea how many times? And Steve's like, wow, it's got to be around upwards of 60, 66. It was 66 times at that appearance. And probably Cicera, I don't know, 83, 84, maybe 85. And Johnny's like, wow, that's impressive. And he goes, well, I know this because I keep a diary. I keep a journal. And I write down how I felt the appearance went, how I felt the bit went, how I felt the show went. And then, of course, it evolves into a comedic bit between Johnny and Steve, where he's kind of, he's razzing Johnny about being
you know it's going somewhere, and it's going to be a comedy bit, but still the premise is what you remember.
Yeah, and the premise was I keep a journal, I keep a diary of my appearances. And he says this specifically, I feel like every professional should do this. It was either professional or entertainer, but it's the same gist. And that really hit me like, okay, instead of telling everybody to just unpack the day and think about it, maybe they're better off writing stuff down. And okay, at work, you're not going to be writing in your journal, but maybe write down a couple bullet points. Just to kind of, so that when you are home and you have 15, 20 minutes to yourself or 10 minutes, whatever it is, you have a couple bullet points. You can go, oh, my first car was, whatever. And I had to do this and I did a really good job. And the second car, that didn't go so good. I made some really big mistakes, and just, again, pour your heart out into the diary. Nobody else has to freaking read it. That's not the point. It's for you to get your thoughts collected and written down, and the lessons you learned, and to write it down and to read it and to see it. And I think that helps greatly with memory. Or worst comes to worst, but another scenario would be is if you did this on a word processor like Word, or probably better yet would be like a Google Docs type, where you can access it anywhere, that now it's searchable. Now you could have your tablet or your phone or a laptop at work, and the car comes in and you just go to your journal, Control F, search, blah, blah, blah. Oh, I left myself some really good notes about don't do this, or hey, remember to do this, or this was the way to check this. Those type of things. And then I just feel like over time that you've done this, months, maybe a year, go back through it and start reading it and read about all the mistakes and all the anxieties and all the things you felt like you couldn't do. And then to see that in 6 months, 6 months ago, I couldn't drive a manual transmission car. I'd have to have somebody else drive it into the bay for me. 6 months later, you think nothing of hopping into a manual transmission car and driving it in. When you first started out, they didn't hardly let you do anything by yourself. 6 months later, a year later, it's rare that somebody comes over to check on you because of that trust. And it's just a reminder that you are progressing and reinforcement, and maybe watching how things get more and more positive.
I'm sitting here wondering why I never thought of this 10, 20, 25 years ago, because, Matt, when I look back at some of the papers that I've collected and the articles that I've written and the books that I've read, I tried to reconnect in my mind what was going on with my world and my life at that time. I have some memories, but not enough. To me, this is almost, you're writing a novel about you and your life, these great learning moments that you're talking about. But before we move on, would you tell us the punchline of that Steve Martin bit with Johnny?
Oh. Like, for instance, whatever date he wrote down, like, great show. My timing was perfect. The crowd was live, or very lively. Lots of laughs. Ed McMahon was on point. He was hilarious as always. Johnny was sluggish. And he would go through, he would just over and over, he'd read off 6, 7 of them, and all of them ended with, Johnny was sluggish.
But to a point, it's a great comedy bit. I love it. But he also is describing, if this was true, if this really, really was true from Steve Martin, right? That he really did this and it wasn't just a bit. I also wrote down, as I was moved by what you were saying, that this is almost like a case study for personal growth.
Yeah, I think it is.
So what's it going to take? I mean, you've got people under you in the shop. Are you going to implement this? Are you going to encourage this?
I did already today. I took our novice. So I hired a woman, Amber. She has very little practical experience, especially in a shop. No shop experience. But you know what? She has a good attitude. She works hard, listens. I've had some fears about memory type stuff, remembering certain things, and understanding what I'm saying or trying to tell her or explain to her. And part of it is, without that experience, I show her how to change a tire on the tire machine, and our tire machine is, works a certain way. as most do. And after you've used a few of them, they basically all do the same thing. The pedals might be located a little bit differently, or the symbols are a little bit different, but you can figure it out. She has no basis for this. None. So I'm kind of walking her through it, right? My fear is I showed her that last week. She hasn't done tires since. So what's reasonable for me to expect her to remember that? Now, certain people, it's not like trying to divide people up by levels or anything like that. People are different. We're all different, right? We got different hair colors, different eye colors, different skin color. You name it, we're different. And we process information differently. We learn differently. So while she's maybe, and I don't think it's a maybe. I think this is what's going on. And it's not her fault. This is how she learns. And that's fine. That's totally fine. She's watching the step by step. What pedal to push. Stuff like that. Very, very, step 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Or maybe if, and it's bad when you start comparing yourself to how other people do stuff. But as an example, if I were to do the same thing, I tend to not pay as much attention to what they're doing, but why. And if I understand what they're trying to do and why, I'll figure everything else out. You know what I mean? That would be difficult to take somebody that is a very hands-on learner. It would be really difficult to take somebody that's a very hands-on type learner. Like they have to touch it to learn. They have to do it.
You don't give them the manual.
You can't just hand them the manual and say, hey man, or hey you, go for it. And it just doesn't, it's not fair. It doesn't, their brain doesn't work that way.
Will they need to write that down, those kind of learners?
That would be one of the more powerful things with the diary or the journal is writing down their take. This is what he showed me. Now I'm going to put it down in my own words.
It's their take. It's what they remember. It's what they did. Forget about what Matt told me, but I'm going to be able to accomplish this thing because I've written down what I know needs to be done in my words, in my language, in my sight, in my hand gesture.
I'm sure my days of going to school, I mean, it would be really heavy into like when my parents went to school and the little schoolhouse type things, or, just old school where the teacher would say, put it in your own words. A lot of my tests were some multiple choice and then maybe a couple of essay style where you'd have to write a paragraph on it. But I think when my parents went, that was almost all they had. The exam was maybe 10, 12 questions, but they were all essay style. And because of that, the teacher would say, explain this to me in your own words. Explain to me in your own words whatever the question was. It doesn't matter. And that was a very, very powerful tool because it turns out we would have to start talking a little bit. We can mention a little bit about neuroplasticity, something I mentioned in the addiction episode, that your brain is malleable. The way it works is somewhat malleable, that you can rewire your brain. It turns out that is one way to do that. And it works really well. It's very powerful at you're taking all this information that you're maybe not so familiar with, but you kind of regurgitate it in your own words on paper. And then you can read it and see it. And it's clicking, right? It's wrinkles in your brain. That's literally what's going on. And creating neural pathways. It goes such a long way to learning this process, learning what you're supposed to do and get better at your job, but you're also learning about yourself and how you learn. And now you can take that process, now knowing more about yourself. Hey, you can show me how to do this all day long. It probably won't stick. Please let me do it. You look over my shoulder. And if you can explain that to whoever, hopefully they have, everybody listening, when you have people under you that you're trying to develop, hopefully you listen to them and take that to heart. Like, okay, I'm going to trust you that you know yourself. You've been doing this journaling program we got you on. I'll watch you and I'll tell you what to do and hopefully reap the rewards. They do and you do because they're feeling better about themselves, getting more competent, which is what we really want. And because of that, you have to spend less time with them and everybody's making, everybody's profiting more.
Do you do let me see, here's the levers here, here's how you do it, here's the 9 steps to change this tire. And then do you take it all apart or go to the second tire and then say, show me?
Yes.
if they go through that and they're really good at it, or they're close and you're happy with their retention, then the next thing, I'm assuming, because you're doing this, you're testing this, you're creating this, you would say, when you get a chance, put this in your own words in your journal.
The last part is what I'm going to do now. This is that fresh of a thing I'm doing. Like, I might have to have a follow-up, because literally today is when I took her aside and said, I have this idea. What do you think of it?
So let me just tell the listener, I won't do this until I hear Matt's follow-up episode. Wrong. Absolutely wrong. If you love what you're hearing from Matt, you're being motivated by this, and you believe you could create better people, period. Better skilled people. You got to do this.
Yeah, and there's science to back this up. So we probably would have recorded this yesterday. Is there anything from the scientific community or the psychological community, something like that? And it turns out there really is. It turns out there's quite a bit. There's quite a few of them on the Journal of Applied Psychology and the National Academy of Sciences. There's a lot of studies about this, and it focuses more. You might have to use keywords like academia or academics, because that's where most of the studies have occurred.
Hey, Carm here. And coming up, Matt explains how you can use anxiety to push yourself forward in a positive way. With registration now open for Apex 2021 in Las Vegas, you can already feel the excitement building for this year's homecoming. Now, I can't wait to reconnect with all of you in person and share stories of our time apart, both professional and personal. And I also can't wait to sit in on the technical and business management training specifically for you, the service professional. With more than 20 sessions, you'll hear from the best of the best, including Mike Reynolds, who will lead training on ADAS for the diagnostic technician, and Jeremy O'Neill, who will lead a class on selling the invisible service solution. Make sure to also experience the new Repair Shop HQ and Joe's Garage. It's designed with you in mind. And visit the show floor to see many new products and emerging technologies. The dates again, November 2nd through the 4th, 2021. Be there. Hey, register now at aapexshow.com. I want to let you in on a little secret. Investing in a cloud-based shop management system could be the smartest purchase you make in 2021. Manual processes can really add up and cost your shop unnecessary time and money. Now, if you're writing out repair orders, you're wasting time. If you're chasing customers for approvals, you're wasting time. If you're manually calculating invoices or logging into multiple systems, you're wasting time. And if you're wasting time, well, then you're wasting money. Do me a favor, pull up Chrome, Safari, or whatever browser you use and type in getshopware.com. Click on the Book a Demo button in the upper right corner and check out Shopware's amazingly efficient software. Trust me, you won't regret it. Again, that's getshopware.com. But think of the benefit that skilled trades could get from adopting this level of, I don't know, what do we call this, Matt? It's a method to transfer knowledge and to learn from your mistakes and to go back and look at. I am so proud. I was flipping through my Google Doc and I realized from a year ago, I am so much better at that thing I struggled with a while back.
Yeah, you think about memory. What's the purpose of having your memory? And somebody, you might think, well, so I can remember history, or think about history and my history. Oh, yeah, but that's a little vague. It's really to learn from your mistakes and not make them again. And depending on what they are, touching a red hot, burner on the stove, well, there's a lot of things going on there that's going to prevent you from ever doing that again, right? So the purpose of memory is to avoid those mistakes. What I think could be the cool thing with this journaling is you have to set it up a little bit, is also while you're writing down the day and while you're writing down the mistakes and the good things and the bad and all that, what you learned, I was doing this brake job. Bob walked by, looked over my shoulder and said, "Hey man, why are you doing that? Do it this way. Let me show you." I better write that down. I don't want to ever forget that. I'm not saying write it down so it's in your notebook in your back pocket that you whip out every time you try to remember. I'm going to go journal it.
And that learning moment was not like touching a very hot stove and having that memory of that. If you didn't remember it, didn't write it down, didn't file it somewhere, Matt, you missed a hell of a learning moment, opportunity.
The more modern human brains are much, much worse about remembering specific facts. You could probably rattle off the top 10 phone numbers you ever dialed. Like if I asked you, what was your best friend in grade school's phone number? You might be able to rattle that off. You certainly could back in the day. You know, you maybe haven't dialed it in, 20 years now. I don't know, 10 years, 5 years. But you could probably rattle that off. We used to keep a pretty good data bank of phone numbers in our brains. I remember even my first job in a repair shop, I had all the parts stores' phone numbers memorized and the dealers. Now
I dial by picture.
Exactly. Nobody memorizes phone numbers. If you ask me what my wife's phone number is, I might not actually know because I just touch her name or I touch her photo. But I do remember where to get that information. So that's kind of back to that Google Docs, Microsoft Word, something digital.
It's your case study of life, of personal growth. I love it. I'll bet you every one of us, no matter if we're in a trade or we're leaders in a corporate job, could look back on a journal.
100%. I might also advise keeping a separate journal, which, if we're doing this on Microsoft Docs, you just open up another document. I'm thinking more present and future and just write down. You wouldn't have to do it every day. You probably shouldn't every day, but maybe once every few months, maybe set something up in your calendar to remind you to go review and write something about the future. Where do I want to be? And hopefully we're talking about a tech. Hopefully we're talking about a young tech that he or she wants to be on the line. I want to be the diagnostic guy or girl. I want to be the alignment guy or girl, or I want to be the undercar specialist, or I want to be the Mercedes specialist in the shop. There's no BMW specialist here. We get a few BMWs. I want to be the BMW specialist. I want to get all the BMWs.
But don't keep it to yourself. Please tell your boss.
But you're going to write that down in your future plans, and then you have to kind of construct how are you going to get there. So don't just write down the goal. You can't just write it down and hope it happens. Write it down and then try to build yourself a little bit of a path. Like, okay, I'm on the lube rack now, and I struggle with these areas. I got to get better in these areas. I can't go do anything here without getting stronger in these areas. Okay, well, now you're already starting a little bit of a path. And then, a quarter later, 4 months later, you go and look. 3-4 months later, you go look. And you got to modify it a little bit. Like, okay, you know what? I got this mastered. Take that off. I got to work on this. Or I'm not on the lube rack anymore. They got me on, seed tech for a title, just something, hopefully we kind of agree, something we can all agree on is like light duty type work. I'm on this and man, I'm really struggling in these areas, but I'm really good at this area. And you taking faults, if you will, but also your talents, your skills, what you're good at, not forgetting that either, and building up your resume as well. I kind of keep saying it over and over. I know it's broken record, probably darn near every interview I ever do. I say, be honest. You got to be honest. You got to level with yourself. You can't be delusional with this. I'm strong at this. Whatever that is, I got this down. If you are, you are. Great. Don't lie to yourself either. But you're kind of building up this resume. You're kind of there now. The stuff you wrote for your future, it's kind of now. Now you go to your manager, you go to the shop owner and say, hey, we're getting enough BMWs. I like working on those. Give me all of them. I think I could be the BMW specialist. I'm not saying I won't work on some of the other stuff, but the other two, they hate BMWs. So-and-so would rather do Mercedes and so-and-so would rather do Volvo, or so-and-so would rather do GM. All the car lines don't really matter. Just, you can kind of have some data to back it up, and they might be like, that's a great idea. Let's do it. And maybe you got even more data for I think I'm worth a little bit more. This is what I do. These are the hours I've been turning. These are the customers I've brought. This is kind of stealing ideas from Robert Silverstein, right? I think he's been touting that for a while, is to know your numbers, know what you're bringing to the table, and not just production, but everything else. What else do you do?
I can see how the journal can make you more valuable to the person you work for and yourself, because I think it's great to be more valuable to your employer, but in order for the employer to see value in you and to pay you the right thing, you have to take the initiative. You have to be the person getting the training and learning from your mistakes. But I need to go back just one moment ago when you said be honest, and I hear you say that all the time. There's just not enough in the industry being honest?
Well, I think just in general, I think people aren't, I think they're tad.
Being honest with themselves, you mean?
Yes. Oh, yeah. It's hard. It's so hard. I'm not saying you have to be brutally honest either. Keep it kind of down to earth. Like, if you're really, really good at struts, like, you can whip them things out. You've got it documented. You know it. You're confident in doing it. The times, no comebacks. Well, gosh darn it, you are. You can be honest with yourself and say, I am pretty good at that. You don't have to be arrogant, but you can have some confidence. Like, yeah, I'm pretty good at that. Rear drum brakes, I suck at. Yeah, you don't have to make a bunch of excuses either. I do one once every 6 years. Okay, well, that seems valid. That's not making a big excuse, but don't say you suck because it's always the parts are terrible or we don't have the tools, or, when it's not really true, and it's just you don't put nearly the effort into them as you did the struts, whatever that is. Just be honest is all it is.
So are you going to start doing a journal?
This might sound like a cop-out, but I think I already do. It's just not written down. It's all up here. It's all in my head. And I think I've been doing it for as long as I can remember. Okay, rewind 20 years. Would you, a 20-year younger Matt, hear about this and say, you know what, that's a smart idea, I should do it? Or are you just built to say, I have such a great storage capacity, the ability to be logical and to understand it. I learn with my hands. No, the journal thing is not for me. I'm thinking even back to 7, 8, 9 years old on the farm, riding with my dad on the tractor. So it's no cab on this tractor. I was riding on one of the wheel shields that go over one of the big back wheels. And he's sitting, in the driver's seat, of course, in the middle. And we are putting round bales in the pasture for the beef cows we had. And it's really muddy, mixed with some other stuff, but it's really muddy, slippery. And for the life of me, I can't recall why I said it. The only thing I can think of is I was scheming so that I could drive the tractor, that he would let me sit in his lap and I could drive the tractor. I think that's what the scheme was. But I say something to the tune of, I could do this better than you. Why I would say that? That was stupid. It was horrible. And my dad looks at me. The tractor's still moving. We're still driving through this. He looks at me like I got worms crawling out of my mouth. And then he gets off the tractor. The tractor's still moving, but he just hops off. And he starts walking up to the house. So I'm sitting on the shield above the big wheel. And Dad is not driving it anymore. And so I hop into the driver's seat and I start turning the wheel. And the mud and stuff is so deep, mud and manure is so deep that, it's not a front wheel assist tractor. It's just, the front wheels, all they do is roll and hopefully steer. I can't steer the tractor to save my life. If I turn the wheels, it just, understeers, pushes forward. And my dad stops, turns around and sees the struggle. And he starts walking back, and I stop the tractor, and I'm like, I can't even steer it.
But he realized that.
Right. And he was on the right side, your right-hand side of the tractor, and he puts his hand on the brakes are right there, the 2 brake pedals. And he presses on the one, and he hits it a few times. He says, this one stops this wheel, this one stops that wheel. And then he bailed. He didn't look back. And that's how I learned how to brake steer. And that's like a too big of an event, but it was stuff like that never left my mind. And it didn't matter if it happened to me like that, or if I was up at the implement helping my grandpa and he's showing me how to grind a saw chain, or how to install blades on a sickle bar with rivets. And you can't tap it, Matt. You got to swing. This stuff, like, I didn't stop thinking about it when, it was time to go home and it was supper time. I didn't not stop thinking about it until maybe I finally conked out to go to sleep.
You're really telling us a story about your mentors.
Yeah. Oh, hell. Oh, yeah.
Today, it's one of the biggest things that we can have. And you think about it, Matt, is you're mentoring Amber and you want to steer her toward journaling so that she could learn, show me back, describe to me back, open communications. You're mentoring her. But you're also saying, if you record this stuff down, the mentoring that you're providing will have huge value. I mean, you don't want to say it. Now, this is the third and the final time I'm going to say this or show this. I mean, there's a point in time where someone just doesn't get it. It's kind of almost like insurance. It's teaching, training, mentoring, insurance. If you would please summarize your day. I have a story to tell, and I've never told this about I was at like 13 driving tractors and bulldozers and all that stuff years and years ago. I'm driving this tractor. I broke my arm by a tree falling on me on a tractor. And anyway, so as you were telling that story, I was reminiscing back to those days myself. This is a phenomenal concept, Matt. No doubt we need to do more on this. I love this. I want to see how successful you're going to be with this.
To talk about Amber a little bit, I'm trying to give her confidence through competency. I don't want it the other way around. I want to get it in the right direction. I want her to get competent and then develop confidence. I don't want to build up her confidence when she's incompetent. I think that would be really counterproductive. And in my mind, counterintuitive. A lot of times we say incompetent, it's really condescending. It really doesn't have to be. If I needed to, build a house, I would be really incompetent because of this. So, and I think this is where the papers, they talk about academics a lot, is the dropout rate in college is at least 25%. 25% dropout rate. People enroll in college, they drop out. One of the biggest reasons, poor performance. What happens is when you're not doing well and now you can feel it, like it, that you're not doing well, but now you can start feeling it from everybody around you. The first week you worked there, they're so helpful. Hey, how's it going? Good morning. Have a good evening. Yeah, it was a honeymoon period. But now you're not necessarily pulling your own weight, and everybody's noticing, and their eyes are rolling a little more huffs, like, what now? I showed you this yesterday. And it starts really working on you. And don't get me wrong, like, I get annoyed if I have to show somebody something again the next day, or much less the same day. But it starts building towards anxiety. And what I think the journaling could really do is help you steer the direction of the anxiety in the proper way. So we all have a certain level of anxiety, high or low. But there's people with high anxiety that are very, very successful and very, very good learners because they use their anxiety, and maybe not consciously, but their anxiety gets used to propel them. The anxiety is used to not fail, to push them to get better. And that might be, spending time watching Paul Danner videos or finding high quality videos online to learn more about a system, or spending time on a professional network, asking questions and trying to absorb, calling up another mentor, asking questions like, this happened.
I think it's a great idea. Anxiety to propel so that you don't fail. I think so many of us push ourselves because there's this little thing inside of us, that stomach that gets the butterflies when you have to do something, and it's healthy, it's good.
But unfortunately, too many times, the anxiety is the opposite way. It restricts you, it blocks you, it prevents you. You're almost immobilized by it. I can't fight through the anxiety, whatever that may be. You got a young tech. The young people don't know how to drive manual transmissions. They've never had to do it. The lawnmowers aren't manual transmission. Nothing's manual transmission. It's rare. But when they get one in, they don't know how. Nobody's ever showed them how to do it. And every time they've tried, they stall out all the time, or it's doing the big shake, or they feel like they're losing control. And it's too many things to keep track of because now I got this other pedal to worry about. And so now they have this anxiety, like all of a sudden they just can't do it. Somebody's going to have to pull it in because I can't drive them. You try to work on them a little bit, but man, anxiety is a really powerful feeling. And ultimately it comes, depending on the source of the anxiety, we're assuming a healthy person, stuff like that you can help them work through it. And then you're going to help them by them helping themselves. And again, not trying to sell everybody on this idea because we have no gain from it, hopefully, other than improving the industry, improving the trade, improving this profession, helping people that are struggling all of a sudden find like, wow, I've been doing this and I find my retention rate is so much higher.
This story about the manual transmission could be the bow on this episode. And here's why. I'm a young person. I was told to bring in the car. It's a manual. I can't. And saying, okay, well, there's a demerit. Now I know you're going to teach that individual, right? And you're going to show that individual. And you're going to explain the gears and how it all works. And if I was that person, and in my journal that night, I could write, I learned to drive a manual transmission. And, it was fun. I'd love to take it out for a real ride, right? Not just pull it in or out. And then a year later, you go back and you see the value of journaling. Because all these learning moments, all these new experiences that you had are right there for you to remember. And I don't remember the day I learned how to do that, but I wished I had journaled it. Because at my age now, I'd love to know how old was I really when I learned that. What else you got to bring us here?
Thank George Menchu. He's kind of like the guy when it comes to learning. He's put forth so much time and effort to learn how people learn, how he learns. And when I talked to you, we were talking about doing this episode and I wanted to do some research. I got to talk to him a while about it and got some really good feedback from him about all the stuff we were talking about, doing it the right way and using it as a tool, not only for memory, but also to try to use it as a tool to learn how you learn, make progress and note the progress, because sometimes you need that little bit of ego boost that after 6 months, even though you've improved drastically, nobody seems to notice, especially you. And it's important to know that you've improved, even if it's seemingly little things, because a bunch of little things add up to big things.
Thank you for bringing up George's name. I did 2 episodes with George, and I haven't done any lately. I'm sorry, we did do some at Vision, I think, a couple of years ago, one with George, but me and George one-on-one, episode Remarkable Results 180, and that was from December of 2016. That was in the early days when I started. And then July 17, George was episode Remarkable Results 241. Exactly what Matt said. You've got to listen to 180. It's all about how people learn. And one day, I'll tell the story of how episode 180 never saw the light of day. He's a great guy and so particular about making sure that people understood and respected that. I mean, I remember George telling me the story, and I think in one of these episodes that when he goes out and does a seminar on how people learn.
Yeah, he's got a poster that you can buy, and it's worth having, posting it up in the the break room. And again, you can't just hang a bunch of signs up saying, yay team. You got to live it, right? You got to, if you're going to be a leader and you're going to hang the sign saying, hey, we're a team, we're a family, all that, you better back it up with some actions too. Otherwise, forget the freaking sign. It would probably just tick people off. But he's got a sign or a poster about learning. And it would be a really good thing to put up if you really truly embrace learning and training. And I think what we're talking about here is mentoring and learning how to mentor, because it might be slightly different than all out training and education. I think there's more layers to it, especially when they're working for you and learning your systems and the culture you want, because you're going to have to teach them your culture. If you want, assuming the culture you have is already pretty good, you got to teach them to operate in this culture and perpetuate this culture as well. So what if they can bang out 60 hours a week? If they're toxic, it doesn't matter. You got to get rid of them. So the mentoring, I think, goes further.
Unbelievable. This is a great episode. Can I do one more thing on George?
Please.
So from the show notes in first episode 180, I wrote this. Leonardo da Vinci inspired him, and he speaks about simplicity and how everything works in a process. And how about this? Also learn about George's famous dad, who was a virologist and helped change the world. And he's very humble about that, but you'll learn that in the episode, and you will be floored to realize what George's dad did. Floored.
It's easy to complain about this profession sometimes, right? It's easy to be negative.
We are in such a great profession. There are so many talented people out there. There's so many smart people. And our thing is there's this 25% movers and shakers up top, and we're trying to drag the next group over with us, right? That's what we're trying to do. I mean, this is a great episode to teach the people. There's a ton of early adopters going to say, Matt, you're right. I'm going to do this. And on a personal basis, I want to do it. And leaders, shop foremen, shop managers will go to their people and says, hey, listen, let's all listen to this episode together and let's figure out how we can all take the next level. I'll change, you change, we all do this.
Yeah, because the alternative is now your managers or your owners or whoever's overseeing really anybody. Now you're charging them with the task of diagnosing why somebody is struggling. I mean, do they really have the time to do that? And then to be right, and then to come up with the solution? And if they do, they're going to intervene somehow, and it's probably not going to work out too well. Where this is now helping somebody kind of diagnose themselves. I think your case study analogy is pretty spot on. Is now you're doing your own case study on yourself and multiple case studies every day, and you're learning. And I mean, think about it. If you got 1% better every day, you left 1% better than the day before.
I go back to the case study for personal growth, Matt, and think about the number of case studies that are presented. Here's a case study on a Toyota Camry in this type of condition. This type of condition, right? I would like to present this case study on Carm in this perfect condition. And he was having, and you could go back and see the struggles you were in. You could see the learning curve. You can see the ups and the downs in your life. You could see the challenges at every different shop you possibly worked at, the great bosses, the great team members. I mean, all this needs to get written down. So, God, can you imagine in 5 years, you'd be able to formulate the kind of team you're looking to work for?
Yeah, and I mean, this just keeps feeding. Like, this is a snowball, because we could take this, and I think we go back to the first interview I ever did with you, just me. If I remember right, I'm almost positive I bring up how John Thornton would. This is pre-internet days and pre-PowerPoint type days, that he had a file cabinet with a folder for, every car or every car line, however he had it managed. But he would print out, we'll just say a wiring schematic for a fuel pump circuit on whatever car. So he had the wiring schematic, and then he would write notes all over this wiring schematic. I can access the wire from here, or I can put my current probe here, or this is a really good place to access, the pump from the top. Just little notes. And then instead of wadding it up and throwing it in the garbage, it went in the file cabinet. And then a vehicle would come in, we'll just say the same year, same type of vehicle. Before he went over to the service, whether it was a service manual or the shop, the computer with the service information on it, he'd go to his file cabinet, open it up. Oh, look, I got something for these. Oh, here. Yeah. Oh man, I got the whole I got a note here even that it's really common for these to not start because of this wire corrodes over here. I'm going to walk over and check it. Oh, sure as heck, there it is. He was doing that long before, PowerPoint came along. PowerPoint came along, and now it's all digital. Now it's so easy to dump photos in, and now actually it's not even PowerPoint. Here's a big plug for Shopware, and the cloud-based systems, the DVIs. They make it so easy to link that stuff to the invoices. So now it's searchable that way. You could link more and more of that stuff that way and make it searchable. And this is almost the same thing, but on a more personal note about your personal processes of working. I mean, the sole purpose is to get better.
It's not a case study on, okay, here's how to change a tire and here's how to do a particular diagnosis, but it's also how you're doing, how you feeling that day. What did you learn? What do you think you need to learn? What website did you discover that really helped you? What did the buddy to the left or the friend to the right say or do? And when I'm in these company meetings, what am I learning about great leadership and communication? Oh, by the way, the episode that we did together, our first one-on-one, was from August 2016. It was episode 146, and that was that's when we first connected. And I think you're the one who's had the most episodes with me. I think.
Yeah, if I kept a journal, I could tell you exactly how many.
If you kept a journal, right. Well, I have a journal. It's called my website, and it's all there. That is my journal. I mean, I reference that website because people call me all the time, or they write to me, and they say, hey, I need a couple of episodes. We need to sit down and do this and talk about that. And so because of the way we've cataloged them, the way we have keywords, the way we have series, it's so easy to pull this stuff up. And, I found out all your episodes and your original one 5 minutes ago because I did the research for it. So, and that was, thank you so much for that August 2016 interview. It set us up on a great friendship. And
I think, I agree.
Great contributions. What are we missing? I won't say the last word. I'll say last call.
Keep in mind that the scope of this, how wide this could be and far reaching. Again, not just writing it down, but also going back and reviewing because like you're saying, this is how I felt. This is what I was thinking. This is, where I tripped up, whatever that may be. This is how I should have done it. Paging back through that and maybe coming across something like, I have no idea how this works, but I still don't. But now and tomorrow, I'm going to go to work and I'm going to remember, I'm going to leave myself a note. I'm going to track Matt down. I'm going to track whoever down. Could I take you to lunch or could I go to lunch with you? And could you explain this to me better? Because I really still don't get it. And I would really like to know. And I really feel like it helps with the memory thing, that the memorization, because when you're starting out, especially if you don't get to do a lot of repetitive type things, how do you expect anyone to access that quickly and accurately? That's a lot to ask.
Hey, thanks for being here, Matt Fanslow, Riverside Automotive, lead diagnostician, shop manager, and great friend. Thanks, man.
Thanks for having me again.
Thanks for being on board to listen and learn from the premier automotive aftermarket podcast. Until next time.